Tom, I guess I'll start with a question on Véronique Yvon. We just kind of asked this earlier on. I know this is news as of this afternoon. So Véronique Yvon stepping away from politics, stepping away for the PQ. So the original question I asked was, this is obviously not good for the PQ, but does it really matter?
Well, at this stage it does, because what it does is it solidifies the image that the Parti québécois is in absolute free fall. Paul Saint-Pierre Plamondon, in the same survey that we've had a chance to talk about a couple of times, the survey puts him at 4% as the preferred leader of the parties in Quebec. And that's within the margin of error of 0. So it's not good for the Parti québécois right now. You know, there have been times in the past where people with no political experience whatsoever managed to pick up a party and do something with it. But you know, he's never been elected. He tried last time. He was defeated, and then somehow he wound up leader of the Parti québécois. I mean, you know, the leadership of the party is gone. The key MNAs are all leaving ship. He's only got a couple left that are saying that they might run again, and we're not even sure about any of those. So, I mean, he might be leading into the next campaign. He might be leading a party with almost no MNAs. At the same time, because of the rules that we have here in Quebec, he's going to have a fairly decent budget, so he's going to be able to make a run of it. I'm just waiting to see if they're not going to try to put a final full-court press on to get somebody else in there at the last minute, because it is heading for an absolute disaster for the Parti québécois. Yvon herself, what an extraordinary member of the National Assembly, a model politician. You know, she always worked hard in the public interest, whether she was in opposition or when she was a minister, and I think that she deserves a break. She just said, look, I want to get back to something resembling a normal life, and I want to get the heck out of here.
So, Tom, let me just ask this. I asked it at Jim before. I'm curious what your take. The PQ is basically fading into oblivion, right? The whole issue of separation does not resonate anymore with Quebecers. Every poll shows that, proves that. So parties have disappeared before. What's the future of that party? Can they be saved somehow? Does the CAQ look at them and go, hey, give us a couple of your guys over here and we don't need this party? What happens?
Well, it's the C word in the CAQ's funny name. I always have found it funny that somebody decided it was a good idea to call a political party the CAQ. But the C part is coalition, and it works as much in English and in French. And what Legault did is he talked to a lot of like-minded people across Quebec and said, look, we tried. You know, Legault always bragged that he was more sovereignist than Jacques Parizeau or anybody else. He said, we tried. We gave it our best shot. It's not going to work. So we're going to go for more powers. We're going to go for control over language and culture. Exactly what he's been doing, by the way. And I think that it's going to be a heck of a long time before you see a true separatist party come back, because the irony of it is, in theory at least, and in their program and in their platform, Quebec Solidaire is a sovereignist party, but I see so many young progressive Anglos working for Quebec Solidaire because they couldn't care less about the sovereignist part. They know it's not going to come to pass, and Quebec Solidaire keeps it there because, well, they don't want to alienate that part of their own base. And Quebec Solidaire, by the way, amongst Francophone voters, because you have to break these things down, the Liberals are still doing fine amongst Anglophone voters. But if you break it down amongst Francophone voters, they're almost in single digits. They're there with the Parti québécois. They're both at 11% amongst Francophone voters.
So let's talk about Dominic Anglade and the Liberals being at 17% and the fact that we've got two new parties coming onto the scene. Will that erode that number even lower?
Well, I mean, if you're talking about Balarama Holness's party, I think that CJD was there front and center to listen to Mr. Holness put up one name, and that person immediately said, no, I'm not running for him. So we'll see what, if anything, comes of that. He's got boundless energy and optimism. But the results haven't been there for him in the past. That's just an objective observation. It's nothing against him as an individual. So I don't think anything whatsoever is going to come of Balarama Holness's announcement that he's got a whole new party. But at the same time, this Anglo Rights Party seems to have had, at some stage of these discussions, a few people in there who, had a bit of experience, some credibility, but it's getting late in the day. We're all, it's late April. It's almost May. And if they had any serious hope, they would have had to say what their cause is. What they're so upset about that they want to break away from the only other party that's ever given the English-speaking community a fair break, which is the Liberal Party. And I still haven't heard anybody articulate what that argument is.
All right.
We're going to be talking to someone from that task force, at least, Andrew Cadell, at 5:20.
Well, I mean, try to get a straight answer out of him. I don't know Mr. Cadell personally, but I have, it's been reading what he writes, often in the Hill Times and things like that. I'd be very anxious to know what his causus belli is.
His who?
Me too.
The cause of this battle. What's
was
the
that a
war
Latin
about?
thing?
I mean, why do you want to do this? And I still haven't heard anything convincing.
Okay. Tom, let me shift this to, and I was watching Pierre Poilievre for the first time at Quoto. I look very uncomfortable today on answering questions about rental properties. So here he is going on about housing and making it more affordable. A little bit of digging. Turns out the fact that he owns rental properties, his wife owns rental properties. The good news is he addressed it. He didn't put it off, but he did look a little uncomfortable answering questions on it today.
It's so interesting. I was speaking to somebody in the investment field today who explained to me that, they're using algorithms and they're going into neighborhoods in the West Island and saying, okay, we're going to buy this house, we're going to buy that house, we're going to fix it up, we're going to rent it, and we're going to make a bunch of money on it. And so this has become a thing. These are actual investment outfits. These are funds that are getting together and saying, we're buying this stuff. So there's obviously a huge problem when something that should be part of your right in a society, which is to be able to work hard and put something aside and buy a decent house for you and your family, that's being taken over by investors and the type. And what you're talking about here is the same thing. There's so much of the housing stock that's going to be bought up by people who see it as an investment instead of something that you can benefit from as a home for you and your family through your lifetime. So this is a huge problem. I did not see what Poilievre had to say in reaction to that. But I think that it's a real problem if 20% of members of the House of Commons own rental property that they're making a profit on.
Well, while at the same time, of course, they're banging the drums saying they're going to change things and it's not fair. Issue. That's the part that irks people, I think, the most.
Well, that's the hypocrisy part, isn't it? I mean, that's where the average citizen just says, "Oh, take a hike. I don't believe you anymore."
By the way, if you're wondering what he said, I'll just paraphrase by saying he said his wife was very intelligent. She's very smart. And she made a very good investment decision when she was younger to buy this rental property and also made it, of course, available for a family that really needed a rental property to move into.
I mean, that's a great answer. But it's a way of trying to avoid the wider question.
Yeah.
It is indeed. Tom, the Queen turns 96 today. Now, my Nana was a war bride, same age as the Queen. I actually met the Queen once, so I'm a bit of a sucker, I got to say, for royalty, but less and less pertinent, right? That their place in our society, certainly here in Canada, is being questioned all the time. Where do you stand on that, Tom?
Well, I got to meet Her Majesty as well when I was at a Commonwealth conference years ago, and the minute she heard that, because you get introduced, there's somebody with a card explaining who you are, and she hears Quebec, she only spoke French to me. And she speaks flawless French. Lovely upper crust British accent, of course, in her French, but flawless French. So I've always been a big admirer of her, the human being.
Me too.
I'm not such a big fan of the monarchy. I think it's a bit goofy that we have a Senate that's appointed and that can make laws in a country that's supposed to be a democracy. I think that a lot of the trappings of our British colonial past could safely be put in not green garbage bags, maybe find a nice museum for them so that people can learn about it. But there's no reason for it. And it's interesting, it's, the Caribbean nations that are all part of the Commonwealth. You can stay part of the Commonwealth even if you get rid of the Queen on your $20 bill. And I do think that we're ready for that adult conversation as a country. I think it's about time for us to become a republic.
Well put, Tom. And do you think that will come with her passing?
Yes, because I think that there are so many people who are looking at her son, who is set to take over from her, and saying, "You've got to be kidding."
Yeah.
Well, there is that, yeah. You mentioned the Caribbean countries. It seems like every time there's a royal visit, they say, "Hey, welcome, and by the way, we don't want you here anymore. We're becoming independent." It's like a regular thing now when they head to the Caribbean.
Right, and the very fact that in this conversation I talk about our colonial past, that's terminology that wouldn't have flowed as naturally 25 or 30 years ago. But there's more and more understanding of the horrors that were wrought by the British Empire. I mean, just look at the expulsion, the deportation, the horrors. I mean, learn that history, the deportation of the Acadian people and what was done. Families literally torn apart, mothers put on one ship with some of the kids, and the other kids put on a different ship. And this is happening. This is the same gang. You know, they're just still there, smiling at us from our $20 bill. So I think that as Canadians, we're allowed to have our own country at some point, and I think we're overdue.
Tom Mulcair, who's back tomorrow morning with Andrew Carter at about 7:40 a.m. Thank you, Tom.
Take good care.